other known as E.A.R.T.H for District 3, on October 4th, 2023 at 4:02 p.m. at the Moose Lodge, 15900 Moose Lodge Lane, Clearlake Oaks, California, 95422. Call to order. 2-3, sorry. Looks like we have one absent and one vacant, correct?
Yes.
James Burton is absent, and we have one vacant seat. Since we have a full house, I will announce that, because we would love to get a full committee up here to do this work. We're going to move to public input. This is where any of you get up to 3 minutes to speak to us on anything that is within our jurisdiction, but is not on the agenda today. So if you would like to speak, if you could go to the podium, all we ask is that you state your name and where you live, and then you have 3 minutes to tell us your concerns or requests, and we are not allowed to talk back. We can't have a conversation during this time, but we will, if your item is something we think we can help you with, we will definitely pick it up after the fact and possibly put it on the next agenda or do something, in the future for this, okay? So with this many people, I would love to see public input, even though I see Wynn up there.
You ready?
I'm ready, go ahead.
I'm Wynn Carey. I'm from Spring Valley. Today I received an email from Canocti Fire Safe Council. They are going to have a Lessons from Lahana meeting on Wednesday, October 11th, 6 to 7:30 p.m. at Canocti Harbor Resort in Andy's Tavern. Admission is free. As usual, after a major fire, everybody starts talking about what should we do? And this is what this meeting is about, and I'm going to leave copies of this over on the table.
Thank you, Wynn.
Hi, I'm Barbara Higman, and I'm from the Keys Club in Clearlake Oaks. I just wanted to announce we're going to have a holiday craft fair November the 4th, and I got some flyers that I'm going to leave here, and if anybody interested in being a vendor there, this will be our second year of a fundraiser. So it's going to be November the 4th from 10 to 3 p.m. That's a Saturday.
Cool.
Hi, Tammy Alexei, North Coast Opportunities and resident of North Shore on the Upper Lake side. I just wanted to let you know that we have got 4 of our 6 CERC members, which I talked about before, California Emergency Response Corps. No, yes, too many things in my brain, sorry. And they are going to have a contest, sort of, for the Great Shakeout, which is October 19th. They will be accepting pictures to be sent to the EPIC Facebook page, and with that, we will pick a winner. So it's not necessarily a photo contest that the best photo wins, but a photo or several photos will win because you'll be into a drawing. So I have some flyers. I can give you the QR code, and please participate because it's an excellent day to represent the Great Shakeout. Does anybody know what that is? No. Okay. So the Great Shakeout is the world's largest earthquake drill. So it's on the 3rd Thursday of every month, and then the time would vary. This year it happens to be on the 19th of October, and it's at 10:19 because they always coincide the time with the date. So hopefully you'll all participate. Send your pictures. It could be a picture of you duck covering and holding on. It could be a picture of you and several others in the middle of a field, just because that's where you were. And we shouldn't re-enter a building after an earthquake happens. But please see me if you're interested, and I'll get you the information. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and move on. Could I get a motion to approve the minutes of the agenda for August 2nd?
I make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're going to move on to our guest speakers. Ms. Turner, Director of Community Development Department. Welcome. Thank you. Sure.
Can we have one up here? Oh, camera, sure. Thank you.
Good evening, or afternoon. E.A.R.T.H Turner, Community Development Director. Is this where I should be speaking? Okay, excellent. I was asked to bring an update on 3 different topics related to community development to you today, and so it's my great pleasure to join you, even though we don't have Wimpy Burgers, which I was really looking forward to. That's all right, I'll get over it. The first is the Clearlake Oaks Roadmap Task Force update. Regarding that, there are a few different updates for you. We just completed an abatement of 265 Butler, boarded up the property in violation of the vacant structure ordinance. Completed the appeal for 180 Schindler last week, and will be starting the process to abate that property. We are starting the abatement process for a property on Pine Street. Working with the local Property Owners Association on several properties constructing without permits. In the area of Hoover Street, there's one property, and First Street, the Parento property, and 3 different APNs, and all the inoperable wrecked vehicles and trailers of trash abandoned along First Street have been brought into compliance. And Marcus wanted me to point out that it's been about 5 years since we were able to achieve compliance on that property, so yay. At 12767 Oak Grove Avenue in Clearlake Oaks, after years of that one being a public nuisance that could be seen from Highway 20, the property owner, under notices from code, evicted the problem tenants and has rehabbed that property. We are down to 1 RV that we need to remove, and 6 months left for the pilot program. So if you do have other matters that need our attention in the Roadmap Task Force area, please notify us as soon as possible so we can get right on those. Ooh, he didn't tell me where the RV was, but I can find out and let Pam know. Okay. If you wouldn't mind giving us a call or sending us an email or going online to get that complaint to us, that'd be very helpful. We can confirm at that time if it's the one that we already know about, and if not, we'd be happy to add that to the list. Are there any other questions about the Roadmap Task Force before I move on to the next update? Yes, Olga. Yes, we have about 6 months left in that pilot program. Olga asked, just confirming that there was 6 months left. And yes, it was originally a 2-year program approved by the board to focus on the gateway community of Clearlake Oaks and dedicate resources from Sheriff's Office as well as code enforcement to focus on cleaning up that neighborhood to see what sort of overall effect it would have on the living conditions of the community. Using it kind of as a pilot program / example. And so it will go back before the board as we're closing up this 2-year period with an update and a report on the effects that we've had with those dedicated resources. And then it'll be up to the board to decide what they want to do next, if they want to pick another pilot program community or where they want to go from there. Oh, good question. So we do have 2 staff that are dedicated to the Roadmap Task Force, but we have kept them employed. So although we will not have that primary focus for those 2 positions, we will have the staff available to still respond to complaints. So please keep them coming when you find them. Yes?
What's your criteria for how effective it is?
Well, we're going to report significant statistics or what we've been able to accomplish as far as how many cases were opened, how many were self-abated, how many we had to abate, how many cases have then since been closed. The sheriff's office is also talking about a number of calls for service that they've had, and a number of arrests and different things that different actions that law enforcement has taken place. So the determination of significance will be up to the Board of Supervisors.
So they're not gonna use any input from the community on how happy we are?
Absolutely, I would hope that you would send in your comments, please. Yeah, because we have been receiving some comments as we've been moving forward, just about the effect that cleaning up the neighborhood has had in that neighborhood sort of environment. And those are very, very welcome. So. Indeed. It will be on an agenda in the future. I would be happy to let Pamela know when it's upcoming, just so this group is notified and prepared. Thank you. Thank you for asking that question. I know that the board is going to definitely want to hear input from the community on this pilot program that they took a chance on, because it's not like they do pilot programs every day, and so it would be very helpful to have your input. Hey, Holly. Do you know that address offhand? Okay. Code enforcement is good. Yeah. Ah, okay. Okay. I'll follow up when I get back to the department, just to make sure that it is on our radar, because, yeah, propane tanks and cooking that's done, yeah, exactly. So outdoor cooking is a high priority concern. Thank you. Any other comments? If not, I'll move on to, yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Yeah. So you can contact us at 707-263-2221. That's one of our general phone lines, and any of our office assistants or technicians answering the phone can route you to whatever department you want to talk, or whatever division in our department you want to talk to. My email, while you have your pen in your hand, is mireya.turner. So that's MIREYA .Turner, TURNER, at Lake County, CA. And all one word, no dots. LakeCountyCA.gov. You are welcome to reach out to me anytime with concerns that you have in your community. Thank you. I'm going to move on to then our second update. We're going to go on to commercial cannabis and then end up with an update on the Cannabis Ordinance Task Force, which is connected to that one sheet we just had passed out. Thank you, Denise. Okay. This update was presented to the Cannabis Ordinance Task Force this past Monday, so the date is really fresh. We have, for approved permits, we have 141 total approved cannabis use permits. Of those, 107 are outdoor cultivation, 25 are mixed light or indoor cultivation. We have 3 processing and manufacturing use permits, 1 processing with distribution use permit, 2 retail use permits, and 3 standalone amendments to use permits. These are amendments that are significant. Pending permits, 73 total pending projects. And this is all, again, just limited to cannabis. It doesn't count our rezones, general plan amendments, other use permits, land subdivisions, etc. So of those 73, 18 are at the Planning Commission review stage. 34 are still within the CEQA review stage, and 13 are still at the incomplete status. Additionally, we have 8 permits that are on our violations list, and those will be processed to go before the Planning Commission for revocation request. Just so you understand where along, like what our process is, when we take in an application, that starts our completeness review. So we send it out for agency review. We're looking to make sure we have all the data necessary in order to move forward to the CEQA process. So that's our completeness review. So the 13 that are deemed incomplete have not gotten through that first phase. Then we have the CEQA review process, which is where we draft an initial study addressing the different environmental impacts of the project and ways to mitigate those, then, if possible, and then we circulate that for the public, which it goes up to the state clearinghouse, and notifications are sent out of a notice of intent so that you know there's an initial study out there for you to review if you want to and comment on. That's the CEQA review, and so that's 34 are in that stage right now. Then, once that CEQA review period is complete, the planner drafts a staff report, which then gets peer reviewed, which then comes to me for final review before it's approved to go to the Planning Commission. And so the 18 just tells you that I'm a little behind, and there are a number of staff reports that are waiting for me to do that deep dive and help them to move, or see if they're ready to move on to hearing. So of all these pending projects, 37 are complete and actively moving forward. 11 are incomplete but actively moving forward. 10 of them are on hold. That means that the applicant has said, you know, I'm not ready to get you your hydrology study, or I'm not ready to move forward to hearing right now. Let's just wait on this. And so we set those aside. 7 are potentially abandoned. That means we haven't heard from them very long. We've been trying to reach out to the applicant, haven't heard anything. So we have a separate process to close those out and get those off of our books. And then again, the 8 violations. Let's see. Does anybody have questions on the permits? If not, I'm going to go on to the annual inspection report. Okay. For 2023 inspection findings, so far we had 132 projects that were listed for inspection. 30 projects that are opting out of cultivation. That means that they contacted our office and the tax collector's office and said, we're not cultivating this year. And in case of those, if it's outdoor cultivation, we don't drive all the way out to the site. We have a contract with a satellite company, and they give us snapshots of that location like the day before or sometime before, so that we can just verify that at that cultivation site, we're not seeing any cultivation going on. We have 23 requests to reduce cultivation. Those we do visit on site and verify that it is reduced. We have several, they're finding a lot of really well-maintained projects. Of several that are on-site correct violations. Those are little things that they can get corrected pretty quickly. And we are finding a few high-severity violations. In particular, the ones that I've reviewed so far are someone who has a 1-acre approved cannabis cultivation and not that other place over there on their other parcel that also has active cultivation on site. That counts as a high severity violation. And we have taken one of those projects to the Planning Commission. It was this last hearing to request for a revocation of that project, and we have just received appeals. We do anticipate, since the project costs people hundreds of thousands of dollars, that they're going to use their due process rights and appeal to the Board of Supervisors and quite possibly end up in Superior Court. So we've been very careful and diligent in our staff reports to make sure that all of the items, all of the information that we are presenting before the deciding bodies, like the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, are legally defensible. Yes? Aren't where? We have your supervisor right here now. I'm sorry. Did you invite all 5 supervisors to the meeting? Okay. Typically, for community town halls, you'll see your supervisor regularly, but the other supervisors are unlikely to attend. There are a lot of reasons for them to avoid having more than 2 in a room at one time. It has to do with the Brown Act. Especially, you don't want to have all 5 supervisors outside of a publicly noticed Board of Supervisors meeting listening to things that are going before them, because they could be making judgments on stuff out of the proper venue. You know, this is not, like, the Board of Supervisors agenda is available, and people from all over the county are always welcome to attend. The community meetings are more focused on community-specific issues, and so you're unlikely to have all 5 Board of Supervisors. But if you wanted to ever see if that was possible, your supervisor's over there. You just have to discuss having a joint meeting. So, but that's why they're not all here. Okay. Then the final item, if nobody else has questions on our inspections or our permits, we're going to move on to an update on the Cannabis Ordinance Task Force. This task force has been meeting for about a year, and this is the latest work product that they have just recently approved. It has a list of recommendations for different cannabis-related businesses in different zoning districts and the different permit level types. I can sort of chunk it. It's a lot of data to sort of absorb in one way, but the main changes are permit types for the cultivation types. You'll notice that Type 5 is a new one that was just, this went into effect at the state level. It's for cannabis cultivation of over 1 acre, as opposed to the Type 3, which was the 22,000 square feet to up to 1 acre. So this is now a larger one. That doesn't really affect us very much, because we have already been working on, like it doesn't matter how much they are processing, we process it all under a major use permit and make sure that whatever they are proposing is consistent with the regulations that we've already have in our zoning ordinance. So the Type 5 is more like an administrative issue. It will not change what is required. Yeah.
One question, I know in the past, the county has allowed people to bundle 1 acre multiple times. With this new state regulations, is it gonna be 1 acre only? And then it goes into those 5 acres that you just mentioned, or are they gonna continue to be able to bundle multiple 1 acre sites?
Good question. So I think what you might be referring to is what we call the clustering. You can apply for 1 acre of outdoor cultivation if you have a parcel that is of a minimum of 20 acres. And so what some applicants have done is they'll purchase multiple adjacent parcels in order to establish a total acreage that is enough to meet the 1 per 20 acre for what they're proposing. This would not change that.
So, why our cannabis operation, when there's one in Personality, that was 80 acres,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a fiasco.
The parcel was 80 acres, or there, because I don't,
Grow was 80 acres.
whew, that's a lot. So at 80 acres, it would be 1 acre per 20 acres. And oh, sure, I'm sorry, you're right. Yeah,
So this microphone works too?
okay, stay here.
No, I'll just run around, because none of the audience, no one's getting what you're saying. Go ahead.
My question was, with this new law that Mariah just told us, a large grow of 5 acres or more, why are they allowing these bundling of 1 acre parcels multiple times because an individual has a large parcel when it ends up being very large acreage of cannabis?
Okay, so according to our zoning code, they are allowed to apply for the amount, they can propose their overall total canopy, cultivation canopy based on the 1 acre per, or 1 acre of canopy per 20 acres. There are allowances currently in the zoning code that do allow, instead of, like, say you had 100 acres and you wanted 5 acres of canopy, without being able to cluster your cultivation site, you'd have like 1 acre on each parcel. So the zoning code does allow for all of those cultivation areas to be consolidated into one spot.
What constitutes a large grow that is least in?
That is very different than what the state just approved. When they approved the Mount Cursa and the Alma and the Prop 64, and they eventually combined it all to, it was a couple of years ago when they finally had these laws established. The 5 acre or type 5 large cannabis cultivation of over 1 acre was something that they had set in it ready. It just wasn't going to come into effect until 2023. So it's at the state level, and because we try to mirror our license types to what the state is saying, it makes, that's why we're adding it, or that's why it's been recommended to be added right now, but it won't change the development standards that are currently in effect.
So when they have 1 acre per 20 acres, and they say have 1,000 acres or 100 acres, that's 5 acres of cannabis. Are they gonna be able to plant 1 acre at each 20 acres, or are they gonna cluster it all in one parcel where they got 5 acres out of the 100 all in one spot?
According to the zoning code, they could do either one.
So,
What we have found is that most cultivation areas tend to be grouped together based on topography or land, preferable soils, or a number of different things like that. Rather than saying, we've got 100 acres, we want 5 acres of cultivation, and we're only gonna put 1 on each 20 acre parcel. We don't see that very often. I'm just guessing that it's not as efficient a farming practice if you have to haul all your stuff to all these different spots on 100 acres, but I'm just guessing. I hope I'm answering your question.
oh, you're answering my question, it's just I have a lot of questions.
Okay. Well, hey, I'm here all night.
I'll let you
Tip
continue.
your waitress, yeah. Okay, another of the changes, I'd like to highlight the recommendations here regarding on-site consumption. That's something new that the board has not considered before. And they're tying the on-site consumption with retail. Let's see. A new one also is special events. Those are another type of cannabis-related business that the board has not considered up to this point. And so those are new on there. And they have those listed in a lot of different of the zoning districts, the agricultural zoning districts, as well as the commercial and manufacturing with a zoning permit. So a zoning permit is easier to get, well, yeah, it's simpler than the minor use permit or the major use permit process. And with a zoning permit, you come in with an application that we compare to, that we see if it meets all of the established guidelines. If it does, then we issue it over the counter. It's different than a use permit, where a minor use permit goes to the zoning administrator or a major use permit goes to the planning commission. So that's what they're recommending for that one. And let's see, you'll see a number of asterisks on these, in these little dots right there. That means that the application for that particular use has to be linked to a different cannabis use already at that parcel. It can't just be a standalone. Oh, also, they wrote it out for you on the back too. So you can check back and forth the different types of permits. It goes into a little more detail there. Yeah.
On the back of your form, you have several locations that say incidental use to permitted sites.
Exactly, that's the
So
asterisk.
who says it's gonna be incidental? Is it a department person saying, I deem this incidental? I think there needs to be some better descriptions, because as people change people are different. Incidental's gonna mean a lot of things, and what's good for this guy as being incidental might not be good for that guy being incidental, and that's leaving the county wide open before the words of incidental. It should be set in stone, just like CEQA and everything else is.
Thank you. Incidental is defined as less than, less impact than. And so as you'll see with those, as you start picturing those uses, it does mean that, like say you want to put on a garage on your property. You have 1,200 square feet of living space in your house. Your garage is an accessory use, so it has to be incidental or less than the primary use on that parcel. So that means you couldn't have a 1,300 square foot garage with just a building permit. You'd have to keep it incidental or less than. And so that is how, in the zoning ordinance, there would be guidelines establishing incidental use, what the maximum sizes that would be in there, as well as the, with the use permit. If your original use needs a minor or major use permit, then this new use would also require a modification to that minor or major use permit.
Is that something the county's gonna put in writing so all of us can see what you're talking about?
Oh, sure. Actually, if you wanted to take a look at the, I think it's Article 68 definitions in our zoning code, you'll find a list of accessory uses there. For categories of agricultural, residential, and manufacturing or industrial. That would be a good place to start. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Oh,
wait. Oh, hold on.
So they can hear you at home.
Great. I attended a Board of Supervisors meeting some time ago, and I think I heard that they were approving these cannabis permits to lessen the number and quantity of illegal grows. So my question is there any county-wide agency that measures how many illegal grows have been reduced, or how much control has been gained over illegal versus the legalized controlled cannabis grows?
To answer that question, I would go to both our code enforcement, which has 2 code enforcement officers dedicated to cannabis, as well as the sheriff's office, which is also very active in responding to calls and eradicating illegal cannabis. But I don't have that answer offhand, certainly. Holly.
So I've attended many of the Cannabis Task Force meetings. And one of the issues that I never quite understood, so maybe you can explain it, is in cannabis events, and we had talked about it a little bit. You could have an educational event, you could have a sales event, a retail sales event, and you could have a consumption event. Obviously, education is lesser impact than retail sales, lesser impact than a consumption lounge. So why is it that these are, first of all, why is it that they weren't separated out under events, you know, in terms of magnitude? And then secondly, why is it that wineries and tasting rooms have minor and major use permits, but these have ministerial permits?
Good question. Okay, so let me make sure I don't forget any of that. So so you've got an educational event that has no consumption, no retail sales on site. You're right, that does have a very different impact. Then you've got what is more common, what is more commonly expected is to have a special event with retailers on site. And that is already in the California state law. But we haven't dealt with it as a county. The board hasn't considered it. Then hold on. Let me read it to make sure I'm not giving you a wrong answer, because that question deserves some thought.
Okay, you could also see that there's some errors on that document, but if you look at the text, it's saying that cannabis events are incidental only. And so I don't know which one is correct.
So it says, yeah, so it looks like they should have asterisks on that, on the special events zoning
So then the
permit, huh?
special events
Yeah.
are only incidental to a use that's already there?
Yeah, that's what it looks like it says. I'll take that back because I appreciate that. And actually, one of the things I've really appreciated about having you at our meetings is your attention to detail is like always spot on. So it's very, very helpful since there are all these moving parts. But that's a really good point. As it does explain on the written side, that they all have the two on them, that they are allowed only as an incidental use to permitted and licensed commercial cannabis processing or manufacturing. So that doesn't make sense to me, actually. Sorry to stand up here and squirm in front of you. I just want to make sure that we're getting the right data. Zoning permit allowable only as an incidental use to permitted and licensed commercial cannabis processing or manufacture. That totally doesn't make sense to me either. You're right. I'll go back and look at that because it should be incidental to an existing cannabis use permit. You know, that's saying that we couldn't have it just at a retail establishment. That doesn't make sense to me.
Right,
So, yeah.
but once again, my big question is, why is it that cannabis consumption events could have just a ministerial permit, but wineries and tasting rooms have to have major and minor use permits? That part I don't understand.
The cannabis on-site consumption?
No, I'm talking about the events, because there's no criteria on the events for level of it, and it doesn't, there's no asterisks or anything, you know, pointing that out. And it seems to me that educational event certainly would be a ministerial permit, but if wineries are forced to go through major and minor use permits, I don't know why there would be a difference. Either that, or maybe wineries shouldn't be going through major and minor use permits.
Okay. I'm taking note on this because after I make sure that that other one is accurate, which is what staff told me, your questions are actually going to need to be taken forward as the Agricultural Advisory Committee considers this, and then the Planning Commission, and then eventually the board. It's a valid question, but I can't speak to what the task force actually approved. I'm not a member of the task force, so I don't want to assume that I know their thinking if they didn't
But
already
it is
say
something
in
that
a
will
meeting.
be brought up, or do we need to write this in?
It is something that I will add to the staff report as a public input question for consideration. Yeah, but it would actually be a lot better if you could email that question to me, so I make sure I get it right, because I'm just scribbling it up here while everybody's staring at me. I don't want to get it wrong. Okay, thanks. That would be very helpful.
So, I'm not a cannabis person, so I don't understand some of this stuff, I'll just say it up front, but for educational uses, which would be incidental to whatever the primary use is, do the same rules apply that would to, say, a consumption event? And I'm thinking about how old do you have to be to go to the educational event? And what is that educational event?
The
Will
types
kids be
of-
able to go?
No.
Okay.
Because they can't get into a retail establishment or any place a retail establishment is located. There are rules there for access. But I don't even know that an educational only event requires a special event permit. Because in the state law, the requirements for a special event permit is, one, you actually have to have a license to be a special event coordinator for a cannabis event. And then each event has its own separate application, because they're making sure that anybody there that's selling has a retail license. You can't, it's pretty rigorous. And then on-site consumption is different. It's not assumed that on-site consumption is going to be allowed yet, unless the jurisdiction allows it. And so that in itself would have additional regulation. So I know that, can't really, I know what we were thinking in City of Lakeport, but I'm not on that council anymore, so I'll just keep it on county. But, yeah, different animal. So, but all of those development standards as well are going to be up for review, input, modification, more input, because they're gonna follow that exact same pathway of first starting with the task force. And we're keeping those meetings hybrid, so you don't have to drive all the way to Lakeport to join us in our small room. You can attend on Zoom. Then it goes to the Ag Advisory Board, which I think is also hybrid. We're meeting in Lakeport that day, but that's run by the Agricultural Commissioner, so I'm not really sure what she does there. But after that, it goes to the Planning Commission in a public hearing that is hybrid. So feel free to attend those. Also, then finally, it's gonna go before the whole Board of Supervisors on an agenda that's hybrid. And so at each of those levels, if your questions have not been addressed, make sure you're there. Or if you can't attend, because they're during the day, so it's hard for people, send something in writing into our email address, and we'll make sure it gets uploaded and put before the board as public input as an attachment. It's really, really important that we get the community input as we help to prepare policy options for the board to consider. And I always welcome all input, even if it makes me squirm in public in front of a whole bunch of people. It's still very helpful.
So I have, this is something that we've discussed at the E.A.R.T.H meetings in the past, but when is it that the task force is going to start considering what the communities and the public are interested in seeing or not seeing, you know, have some input into that?
Could you narrow that down a little?
Oh, for instance,
I would think that everything that we're looking at would be of public interest.
and I'm not saying it isn't of public interest. What I'm saying is, back over a year ago, we had the public meetings when Mary Darby was here. And the public was allowed to come in and voice what their concerns are. And there was a temporary, ordinance that was prepared from that. There were things like exclusion zones, size of projects, all sorts of things. And those, way back at the beginning, we were told would be discussed towards the end of the whole ordinance. But so I'm just curious, since it's been over a year now, when the task force is going to start looking at the community concerns rather than just the LCCA concerns.
So the two things that you mentioned are actually development standards. And now that, as soon as this recommendation gets before the board, that's when we get feedback on what the board is interested in possibly considering. Like, they'll probably kick some of this stuff out. I don't know, but they might. And so it's not until after that we're really going to dive into the design and development standards, which include those exclusion zones, include the setbacks, the density, things like that. And so keep your eye out, or your ear out, for when we start talking about development standards. That's where all that is housed. Yeah. Now, with that being said, let me issue something else. Since this is taking a while to get before the board, there has been conversation about adding to an upcoming task force agenda, starting to talk about general types of development standards. So, which I don't even remember what those are now, but it would be things that would kind of apply across the board. So don't wait too long. It helps to still stay kind of on top of our agendas, which are posted on our website. Not where you go for the board agendas, where you have to click that extra link and it sends you out. When you click on that agendas and minutes link on the main county page, it takes you to this long roster of all the different advisory boards and committees that we have. Scroll down to the Cannabis Task Force, and the agendas that we have are there, as well as minutes and video, as soon as we're able to get them linked. So hours of endless entertainment that you could access at your fingertips to stay updated. And always feel free to send us an email if you have input, because we really want to hear it. Hi, Angela.
Okay, so a couple of things, I'll just throw it all out there. Back to special events, is there any plan to put standards? So wineries for special events, they have standards, like hours of operation, decibel levels, those kind of things. So is cannabis special events gonna have the same kind of standards? And then we've asked a few times for a chart like this one comparing wineries. So what kind of what kind of permits are required in which zones for wineries, so that we can see the comparison without having to shuffle a lot. And then is there any plan to update the GIS mapping so that we can see density and where big clusters are or where they have the potential to affect an aquifer? I know Andrew had mentioned updating the GIS mapping, but that hasn't been talked about in a while.
Thank you. Andrew does generate small project-specific related maps for each staff report now. It's towards the end, or it's on an attachment, but it shows a blip for the proposed project as well, and the size is sort of reflective of its magnitude of size, and then it shows vicinity blips of others, either approved projects or pending projects with their size also. And so that's proven to be a good visual, but we have not gone forward to make that a county-wide map, though we are talking about it.
Okay, and adding like retail and consumption, everything else, okay.
Just so they can hear you at home.
Thanks.
And then about the chart comparing the two, and
If I have staff
standards.
time, well, it's
Sorry.
the way we determine what is available at a winery is I usually start with Article 27 because that's got my chart on it. It's Article 27 like on page 3 is the zoning permit chart, and if you scroll down to like page 33, that's the use permit chart, both minor and major, with a number of listed uses. If you don't see winery there, then what I would do, if it were me, I'd be going to the to Article 5, 6, 7, the Ag, RL, RR, SR. I don't think they allow wineries in SR. Anyway, to those zoning district guidelines, because those are the ones under minor or major use permit where you're gonna see wineries of typical size. Typically, your smaller winery, which is less than 15,000 cases produced per year, are gonna be a minor use permit level, and the ones that are over that are gonna be major.
Okay, so I think what I'm getting at is something like this for wineries would be helpful going forward so that everybody, can compare apples to apples. I mean, if we're lumping everything into ag, it'd be just for transparency purposes so that we understand what we're really getting into.
I will make note of that. Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
you're pretty much mirroring, I don't know if I need this, you're pretty much mirroring what the state does. You're just keeping up with the new laws with the state.
We try to stay synchronized in their definitions, but it's up to every jurisdiction as to what cannabis-related activity they want to allow. And so that's entirely policymaking, which is up to the board. So, but these recommendations are in compliance with possible state options. How they wash out at the other end, though, is entirely up to what the board decides they're open to seeing in our county.
Well, my point is, you could be secular and have more restrictive laws than the state.
Indeed.
In the county, and
Yes.
that's okay?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So there are certain state senators that are, like Senator Weiner is the only one that jumps to my mind, but who are really advocating for access and trying to open up the regulations. So he was the one who tried to pass the law, or who I guess did. He was the one who was against the state law that said if you don't want delivery in your county, you can just not have it. And so delivery people for cannabis could use like the roadways, but they couldn't deliver in a county that wouldn't let them. But he's the one who just got that law passed for medical access, saying, changing that. So this is a whole huge behemoth regulatory framework that's just, it's like shifting sand at the state right now. It hasn't settled. There are all these different aspects that are sort of getting hammered out legislatively that could, laws, once they make them at the legislative level, sometimes they get actually hammered out in the courts. So this is a huge ongoing process. And Lake County in our efforts has remained very conservative. The board has always directed us to move very slowly. Which helps because then we don't get caught out in front when the state law pivots and we have to retract. So we are one of the more conservative counties as far as access or allowance or permitting regulatory structures.
That I did not know, and I appreciate you saying that. When I use the word secular, I didn't want to say conservative or anything like that, but I would imagine the county can't afford lawsuits. So why
Well,
would
we don't like them.
keep up with the rest of the state?
Plus, you know, I really appreciate the position that the board has taken of moving slowly, because it's not every day that you get to take a totally illegal industry and try to bring it into a legal regulatory structure. It's like sausage making, which is always messy. And so I'm thankful that, like Humboldt, they just opened the floodgates, and then the next thing you start seeing is articles about all the Humboldt planning staff either like calling in sick all the time or quitting. And that was one reason why the board established, I think you were there, established a rule that you had to have a notice of applicability, which is a water resources at the state level document, by a certain date. And that was it, because that kept the floodgates sort of lesser. So we were still overwhelmed. We still went through a 3-year rough period, but the board was doing everything it could to keep us moving forward slowly while they had time to consider regulatory structure and what effects it was having on the public. So this is by far the largest overhaul of that policy that since it was established.
There's no limit on the amount of money you can charge for permits, right?
Oh, there is. In public service, you can charge a permit, but it has to be closely tied to the expense it takes to develop that permit. So that's why we do cost studies and we charge averages. One nice change that we have done is it went from being a flat fee, which it was in the beginning, to now it's a cost recovery based. And so we keep track of our time. And the applications that are well done, buttoned up, ready to go, those process quicker, and so they take less time. Whereas the ones that are just trash, that we actually have to either handhold or it just takes us a lot more time, we keep track of that. And we haven't gone over yet for the billing, but we're ready to. So I appreciate that the board approved that too. Not just because they're my boss and one of them's sitting over there, but you know, it is very helpful, the conservative approach that they consistently take to these things. They retracted the early activation permit because we realized that just wasn't working. It wasn't taking into account the environmental impacts, and so they completely did away with that. That is no longer possible.
Yeah, I had a question. Does the task force involve itself with the available water supply?
Good question. No, they are not exactly. But the board has already passed an ordinance that requires hydrology reports for any use permit now. And so water supply is a standard section in all of our staff reports. And also we do contract with LACO, which is a neighboring firm, because they have one of like the 6 licensed hydrogeologists in California. And so she does do review of those hydrology reports.
Do they have a map of the aquifers in the Lake County Basin?
We're working on that right now. I think I would defer to Supervisor Crandall, because there are a number of presentations recently before the board where we're finally getting funding to do that overview countywide of the aquifers and get those mapped. But that data has not been available to us yet.
I mean, I'm assuming that the biggest part of the water used to grow the plants is going to be from wells.
Yes, groundwater is a requirement. They're not allowed to pipe it in. They're not allowed, like the water trucks, only in cases of emergency.
The aquifer is not unlimited.
Indeed.
Do we know the capacity of the aquifer, and do we know how much water it takes to grow a single plant to be able to multiply that by the number that are going to be put in?
We have averages for what it takes to grow a single plant, and it's also, we take into account the type of irrigation they're going to use. Then as well, what I have seen reported out in the staff reports, because I'm totally not a hydrogeologist, is that they take a look, they have some well tests, and they look and see at how dramatic the drawdown is from that well during this certain period of time, and they estimate as it recharges the capacity for the anticipated use.
Do you have an approximate number of gallons it takes for 100 plants?
No, but I could find out for you. Do you have a preferred type of irrigation method?
No, I do not have that information. That's
All right.
what I was looking for.
I'm writing it down.
Per plant?
That sounds familiar. Yeah. I was
Per
going to
day.
ask Planning Commissioner Miley Field, because she does those calculations in public session. She's
No, I
a
mean,
farmer.
well,
Yeah.
6 times 365 though, that's, you're approaching 20,000 gallons a day per plant.
And that would be
Right.
reported in the project
If they got
description
1,000
under the
plants,
hydrology section. Yeah.
That's,
Yeah. They have to be able to establish
2 million
that
gallons.
the return, when it goes back up, I forget the word of that one, but is not significant.
Okay, my concern is if the aquifer gets depleted below the level of the lake, then the aquifer below the lake that is fed by water from the lake will be its only source of water. That's my concern.
That is way over my education level to answer that in any meaningful way. But I completely understand your concern, and I think that it would be foolhardy for us to assume that our natural resources are infinite. You know, that aquifer, if it's not getting restored, is going to just collapse. And so that is of consideration.
Yes, it is. I mean,
Absolutely.
the water can't go uphill.
Right?
It can only go downhill. And
I hear you.
we got close these last few years.
And with the kind of whiplash climate we seem to have nowadays as our new normal, it's reliably going to happen again.
Yes.
Which is also
yes.
why every use permit application has to require or has to include a drought management plan.
That's exactly right. And unless we get some real good studies of the lower elevations, you know, down a couple thousand feet, we're liable to get into real trouble.
Well, my only topic is cannabis, but as far as water use goes, I mean, I could stay here all night because it really affects almost every aspect of land use permitting. So yeah, thank you. Get on.
I see the supervisors okay temporary drying sheds and all of that nature.
Okay.
In all this planning, my experience living next to a very large grow was the noise from the temporary drying sheds, which this ordinance come about from this project, was the noisiest at times. It goes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week till that process is done. I think there should be some boundaries set where these temporary structures can be set so the noise level is quiet enough that people can sleep at night. And there needs to be more work on what is being presented to the public, because when it's done and you say at the nearest property line you can have 85 decimals, well, some of these drying houses temporary, I was over a half mile away and I was well above 85 decimals all night long. So I think as you're planning all this cannabis, we need to look more to the residents to make sure their lives aren't detrimental to the cannabis industry.
I'm going to use
From
you,
the cannabis
I'm going to
industry.
use you as my example on why I always stress the importance of public input. That is exactly what we should hear before the board adopted the ordinance. Because if you're taking a look at these draft ordinances, things that are changing, the generator requirements or the setbacks or vegetative screenings or things like that, all these different ways that we use to minimize impacts on a possible land use from surrounding environment, which includes neighborhoods. Those are all vital things for you to take a look at, and that would be like where you would have seen, okay, we've got this 100-foot setback from a drying shed, and we've got the possible generator use, which they did talk about having the shielding, the noise shielding casing. That is all where you would say, that you would send me that email. You'd be like, okay, well, I have this illegal one that's over here. It's only this far away from me, and boy, is it loud. That's when we can actually, that's very helpful data that is all part of this policy-making process. So please stay in tune. Please don't feel like your comment, you know, like maybe everybody else has said the same thing. Don't even care. Just if you've got input, send it in.
Well, our experience was, yes, it had a generator. It had decimal levels. The generators you can, through different manufacturers, you can bring the decimal level, almost like you get these little Hondas, you can sit right next door to them and still carry on a conversation.
Yeah.
What we had the
Honda
most
has
noise.
decent-sized generators that don't make any sound at all up here.
What we
You
had
can
the most
stand
problem.
stand next to the nice Honda generators, and they've got full-blown mufflers like on cars and stuff. Have a conversation, you can't hear. There's no excuse to not have any, to have noise.
Well, additionally, if we just recently, I mean, the board just recently adopted something that would allow for temporary drying structures. So if in your neighborhoods, or if you drive by and see something that you know has not been approved by the board yet, then that's actually a code enforcement complaint. So you give us a call and we go out there and say, this is an illegal temporary drying structure, what are you doing? You're causing negative impacts on the neighborhood, and we move forward with that. So please, I'm actually requiring a lot of you today to stay in tune for what's coming, as well as notice what is negatively impacting you now, and call in to code enforcement for a complaint. And if you don't hear from them, call me or email me, or email your supervisor, who I know will email me or call me. So don't just sit back. It's important. You know, we're trying to roll out in the department. We're trying to make sure that our communities are good places to live in.
But my point is, the fans inside these temporary drain structures is what created the most noise.
Okay, thank you.
So,
I have a question.
Yes, voice.
I'm next to talk anyway, so I'm gonna use a minute.
I didn't ask if I had a time limit. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
I don't care about that. We're from the Spring Valley area. There's a lot of us here. We're the ones that started the uproar 2.5 years ago or so about the marijuana in the area, and started getting regular meetings like this. And we were told, or I think led to believe, and I know I'm not, I mean, I don't catch everything, but there's a lot of people now that we feel like we were told that no, because of our zoning in Spring Valley, no marijuana could be grown out there. Now what we're hearing is, because of a 2019 law, that is either the states or the county adopted it, that they can have 6 plants in every single residence out there.
Are you speaking of commercial cultivation
No.
or personal
We're
use?
talking about personal use zone.
Okay.
So 500 some odd homes, that's a lot of marijuana being grown. Plus, my other issue is the water company doesn't agree with what you say. They say anything like that is being grown for personal use, including tomatoes, cherries, strawberries, your horses, your animals, your pigs, any of those kind of things don't fall into the zoning for Spring Valley. And how does that, I don't get how you can say those people can come in and use that to grow marijuana plants with a water supply that doesn't belong to them. It belongs
The
to
water
the
supply
community.
that doesn't belong to them?
It belongs to the community.
Wait, so just so I understand, are you saying people are growing plants on their property with their water?
Yes, with the with the county, the special districts.
Right, okay.
So
So
how does that fit in, or am I wrong?
currently in the zoning ordinance, it does allow for personal and medicinal use. It does have some standards for how it is grown, but
Yes.
it does allow for it.
I talked to special districts recently because I had this question because somebody asked me. Our community water system says no outdoor watering of plants, lawns, or animals.
Alrighty. So the county jurisdiction stops at county regulations. If there are CCNRs that are further restrictive, we don't enforce those.
Well, she's saying,
That would be the CCNR enforcing its own rules.
the water company doesn't agree with that. They're saying the same thing. You can't use that water for,
Okay, so this sounds like something we should chat about offline, because there's a
Okay.
lot that I think I'm missing here.
okay. I have one other thing to say too. Why can't they get rid of the generators and use solar like everybody else is being forced to do?
There are a number of projects where generator use is temporary because they do plan to install solar.
Cool.
There are a lot of, and I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses, but a number of the anticipated improvements on structures were delayed due to the market crash. So that's why a lot of cultivators have been opting out or reducing their size, things like that. They've been pivoting to sort of continue to stay viable. But some of those buildings, the processing buildings, have been put on hold, and that's actually why the supervisors considered temporary agricultural structures to sort of step in and help them fill that gap.
Aren't we also short on code enforcement people right now?
We're always going to be short on code enforcement.
It's hard for them to enforce.
We do have a number of them, and we are applying for a grant. Supervisor Crandall didn't know this, but we're looking to apply for a grant that'll bring on another one for 3 years. I really don't like funding personnel through grants, but in code enforcement, sometimes that's our only option because they're not. Otherwise, it would be a bigger draw on our general fund, and we want to avoid that.
I have a question on the water and also with Sam's wondering if there was a study. They had huge agriculture up here with almonds and walnuts. Was any studies ever done with the aquifers on that from years? I mean, I know there was a lot more.
So a lot of those were planned before I was born. I don't really know.
Yeah, well,
But
I'm a
I can
little bit
tell you-
older than you.
I can tell you that the requirements for a cannabis use permit to cultivate cannabis is much more stringent than if you wanted to plant a vineyard. Though if you wanted to plant a vineyard, you're gonna have a lot of regulations too. They're just not county and community development. You're gonna be dealing with the agricultural commissioner.
Right.
You might get a grading permit from us, but a lot of agricultural grading is also exempt in the effort to help our agricultural businesses succeed and thrive.
Right, and that's what I'm wondering. Has there ever been any studies that you know of? And I know that's probably a lot before your time. Maybe somebody else could answer it.
You know, environmental health keeps records of well permits, but as far as I know, there were no hydrology studies required to get a well permit, and in most areas of Lake County, there still are not. There's that one special area of interest, the Big Valley, and so we did have somebody go before the board to request a new well, but that's kind of outside of what I'm talking about, and it wasn't for cannabis.
Thank you. I was just curious.
Yeah, yeah. It's good
There's a
stuff.
lot of wineries too.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate that there are a lot of wineries myself, but yeah. Okay. I'm gonna sit down now when I'm staying until it's over, so feel free to come back. Yeah.
Is there any proposed hydraulic study? to do
Countywide?
Is there a proposal to have a hydrology study or hydraulic study done?
Well-
Aquifer study?
So there are grants and plans, and I think they're actually doing a lot of flyovers now with the intent of creating, and I'm looking over so he can correct me if I'm wrong, but, somebody just tell me I'm right? Oh, you did, oh, was that you? Oh, okay.
Blue Ribbon Committee, from the Blue Ribbon Committee, they put together some funding to fly over and get an accurate, overlay of how the aquifers would look. So there's still they're still working on it, they still have more to go, but they are looking at some of that already.
One other thing we've been talking about, but in our department, but it hasn't gone before the board yet, is doing what's called a programmatic EIR, which is an environmental impact study and report county-wide of the different various impacts that cannabis could have on the environment. And a number of jurisdictions have done it, but we still haven't gotten a solid understanding if it was helpful at all. But that would, one of the benefits I think that it would establish is, right now we don't have any thresholds for odor impacts, which is significant in the cannabis industry. And so it would establish thresholds of impacts for not just odor, but for noise and aesthetics, cultural resources, wildfire, tribal, what's the other one? Tribal cultural, yeah. And so all like 18 or 19 categories that we have to evaluate or take a look at when we're looking at its impacts in the environment would be established with corresponding thresholds. Yes.
Yeah, just to step back to the aquifer situation, it's being used kind of generally. There are 3 types of aquifers in Lake County, and what we've only looked at so far is the alluvial plain aquifer, and I guess 8 of them. So it's actually required by the state to be looked at, but there's 2 others that are not, and those are causing problems, not just by the cannabis people, but by the wineries. And I know several folks that have come to me asking me, wineries, the wine grape growing, because of the deep well attributes that they have, they are able to go down deep well. And domestic is usually a shallow well, so the shallow well people get drained out. And I know several folks that have been, closed out. You don't hear about them, and one of the reasons is because if your property well goes bad, you don't let anybody know. You try to wait for a good year, and the well comes back, and then you sell. And that's been going on. Some folks are bailing out just simply because they know they have a bad well. And that's because deep well's right next to them. So we don't have the kind of approach that we need in order to discover that and limit the deep well aquifer drilling. So the other 2 are, just because I mentioned them, fractured rock aquifer and volcanic plain. And so there are some volcanic plain aquifers here because of the type of soil that the volcanoes bring in. And that basically will feed a lot of the springs on the side. And those springs go dry, and people wonder why. It's because it's being overtapped on the volcanic plain. So in any case, we don't have that kind of approach. I really wish we had the kind of expertise at your level where they can start to look at that, and particularly for these cannabis grows.
I wish I had that expertise at my level too. That'd be awesome. Well, Jim will tell anybody who'll listen to him. That's pretty public.
Have there been any publications of that information? I was unable to find any. Yes. Where did you get your information? On the aquifers.
Well, actually, I used to teach freshwater ecology, and so it's been an interest of mine forever. And I know what a fractured rock aquifer is, and we're on one, and it's artesian in nature. So it's not hard to figure it out when you're on a particular kind of well. Volcanic plain stuff is kind of esoteric, but we found this out when I was on board. A couple of the wineries basically were proposing some taps into the volcanic plain. And at the end of the day, we found that a lot of the folks around there were complaining that they were going dry, just basically on the fields of grapes that are already showing up. So I started reading all the reports. It takes a long time to go through all the geology, but this is a link between the geology and what they're calling hydrogeology. And the hydrogeology, the baseline for that is out of the Central Valley, and that's an alluvial plain aquifer that goes several thousand feet deep. We are quite different here.
And so a lot of the tests that happen here are the same ones they do in the Central Valley, and they only work for the alluvial plain aquifers. And they don't even work very well for that because these are so shallow. So this is. You can get a replenishment rate. I will tell you, I actually did a little study of the information that was available in the Upper Lake area and where that water was coming from. But if I were going to move anywhere and I wanted to make sure I always had water in alluvial plain aquifer, I'd go to Upper Lake, because the water's coming down from the mountains to the north where they're getting rain all the time, and it's coming down towards the lake. So. Yeah, that's right. So there you are. Anyway, I don't want to dominate this, but if you want to talk to me later, I'll be glad to talk to you.
I just want to take a moment to thank everybody for letting me come speak to you tonight and for hanging in here during this whole time. And please feel free to contact us for any community development related reason at any time. Thanks a lot.
And thank you. And I'm going to tell you right now, you didn't squirm once. You looked great. So with the time limit on our meetings, we're going to kind of expedite, because that presentation was important. I know that's really what probably filled this room today. So I wanted to make sure that it got every minute it deserved. So thank you.
Absolutely.
So we're going to move on to the item number 6, Spring Valley update. Please, Tony?
I think I got most of my stuff out, but I didn't know when you had some Firewise stuff that you wanted to.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to send in if any of you know or would like to start a Firewise program in your area, it's an annual permit thing, and the annual permit is due November 1st. And,
Check it.
so I've got the total that we've done this year. We've done approximately 54,000 pounds 54,000 pounds of tree waste taken out of the Spring Valley subdivision. The Firewise group and the residents that have paid for this have spent approximately $4,500 this year, and we've done approximately 1,600 man-hours of work between the residents and the volunteers on our Firewise group. I understand now, thank you. I understand now that there are 20 Firewise groups in Lake County, and I'm asking a couple of the fire safe councils to have a meeting this month, so those of us who are doing Firewise can go through the report. It started out 5 years ago a 3-page report, now it's a 9-page report, plus CAL FIRE is requiring a 5-page projection for the next 3 to 5 years of what you're going to accomplish. And I'm sitting here going, so we'll see.
Lake recovery?
So we have a lake kind of up in Spring Valley, hidden. Most of you guys haven't seen it or know where it is. It's not very big because over the generations it was filled in with rock and sediment, but we still have the creek out there, and it's still working for us. And so we have a plan to restore the lake, and it's kind of going pretty well. I guess I'm not happy. You want to point it out?
Still waiting for someone to help clear it? Is that what it is? And then remove the sediment?
Right, but I think what they're waiting for right now is funding, because I guess they used about $300 and something thousand to design a plan for the new lake, and now there's. Yeah, I know, and now there's no money for the lake, so I guess there's people working on funding for it through the. Yeah, that's the other thing. The problem is with the marijuana, and you can grow it wherever the hell you want to, excuse me. We have somebody that broke our gates again. The campgrounds and stuff back there are private. Broke the gates, backed their trucks in there, and loaded up water tanks. Pretty sure they're not using them for their tomatoes, yeah. So it's frustrating because this is not the first time. We had a big problem with it 2 years ago. I mean, don't get me wrong, marijuana growing in Spring Valley is a lot less than it was before. But there's still stuff that they're doing and stealing and breaking and damaging, along with the people that are tearing down our roofs and things, breaking into our buildings and that kind of stuff. And I don't know if there's people here that realize it, but we have cameras out there by the pantry that are on New Long Valley Road, and when people are dumping trash and stuff, we have the opportunity to, you know, get a hold of me or talk to Win or somebody. We can get a hold of EJ and they can look at those cameras. They are license plate cameras. They take a picture of you and your license plate, and we can go after the people that are dumping all the mattresses and stuff, which are free to dump at the dump, but somebody apparently doesn't want to make that drive. We don't know if they're coming outside the community or they're inside the community, but just don't be lazy. Take your crap to the dump. I guess that's it. We had a little frustrating of a month with the break-ins, and the water thing irritates me. We ran pretty low when we had the drought going on that creek, and I'd hate to think that is our water source. I'd hate to think that somebody's just taking a free hand at it. That's it for now, I guess. EJ, you can go ahead and go.
Okay. Thank you. And we will move on to item number 7. I'm going to turn this one over to Holly, the Kloss Park update. Find a mic? Yeah.
So basically, I'm reporting back on the John T. Klaus Park, which if some of you do not know, John Klaus donated the property, which is almost right next to the Moose Lodge, all the way to Clearlake Lava. And that's going to be, and money to get it going, and so that has been in process. It's 650 acres. Anyway, they just recorded the grant deed for the property. They're still winding their way through legal trust issues, such as the manufactured homes are not registered and and some of the back taxes have not been paid. Right now, they're getting quotes on property cleanup, which is extensive. They've also had positive discussions with the property owner just to the east of the property, who's amenable to giving them possible access to develop a parking lot at the end here of Almond Road. And they're now working with some of the agencies in the county parks master plan to include recommendations for this park and also development of a public use plan. And when they know more, then they're going to be coming to the community to get input.
Thank you. All right. Did you have a question on that, Tony? No. Okay. North Shore Fire Protection Update is Chief Mike here?
Chief Mike had a meeting at 2:30.
Okay.
So with PG&E and other important entities, so he wasn't sure he'd be able to make it. I do have flyers.
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Chief Mike had a meeting with PG&E and some other entities that was very important at 2:30, so he wasn't sure he'd be able to make it here in time. I do have some flyers about the chipper program that is funded, so you can help yourself to those at the entry over there, and also I have extra copies here.
Thank you.
Can you tell us about the fire station?
Easy pass. We have power to the fire station. As of this afternoon, which is a huge step. The alarm system can be installed, the doors can be installed, entry can be installed. The doors have arrived. That's a whole different process and company to put those giant doors in. But they're here. If you happen to have a chance to just come down Tamarack and park and look in, you'll see that the interior structure of the fire station is also under construction. So at the east end, there's a wooden structure inside that consists of office, kitchen, meeting room, and sleeping quarters, and a bathroom. So it's like a little structure. Well, it's a big structure. It takes up a third of the end of that big metal building. So there's water, there's a sprinkler system, there's electricity, there are doors that will be installed soon. And I know that Mike wants to get that done and move that along so he can get engines out there. There'll be engines out there before we're granted use permit, so it'll be a conditional use permit so that there'll be engines that can be used and in the building. What about the driveway? I can't. Pardon? They have not, and I don't know if that's gonna happen, so I can't speak to that, other than, we have electricity. It's a very exciting thing.
Yes,
It's very exciting.
great.
Yeah, but now we have rebar in the cement pad. Tony, can I say a word about the lake,
Sure.
the lake bed recovery?
Yeah, oh, yeah, sure.
Um,
You're on the board, sorry.
Real quickly, because it's
I will
not
say
this item
real-
and we
real
only have
quickly,
like 3 minutes.
What started out 14 years ago as a $500,000 project is now a $6 million project. And Special Districts is committed to finding that money. They have a good source and lead and acquisition of a good chunk of that. They are working on that. Scott Hornig is committed to committing Special Districts to that project. January 28th, construction will begin on that lake bed recovery.
Wow.
Great.
We use that, the other thing with that
Change
lake that
daily,
makes it
right?
important is it improves our ability to bring the helicopters and stuff in during the fires to land, pick up water and get out of there, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you very much. Anything under, well, Supervisor Crandall, it's all you.
We ran out of time.
We ran out of
Sorry,
time,
we
like
cut
30
you so
seconds.
short.
30 seconds. Yeah.
One of these.
With the large item dump day that's going to happen on October 14th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. It is going to be at the Lakeport Transfer Station, 230 Soda Bay Road. I just posted it on the E.A.R.T.H website or Facebook website as well, but I'll say them out loud. Lake County Waste Solutions Recycling Center in Clearlake on Davis Street, and the East Lake Landfill, 16015 Davis Avenue, and they're taking household items only: furniture, appliances, mattresses, large bulky items. That would be that. So like no tires, no hazardous waste, no household trash, no business waste or construction debris, but all of the other items they're taking. So, yeah, so be looking out on the 14th to do that. Let me go to my list here real quick that I have. There was something, but I'll just go on to the budget real quick. We passed the budget this last month. The main highlight I'd like to give is that the board encouraged the directors to look into the positions that are not being filled or haven't been filled for quite some time. So go ahead and open it up and use that funding, considering the fact that they haven't been able to fill these positions. Use it to whatever resources they need to allocate in order to help get the services to you all that we're struggling with, because as frustrating as I know all of you feel every time you hear, well, we don't have enough staff or we don't have enough resources, this is one of the things we're looking at. And we've assured the directors and administrators that if they were to come back and ask like, hey, we do want this position or allocation back, or we do want this budgetary item back, we will go ahead and work on that with them. So we're not just taking it away and then not allowing it to happen in the future. The other thing is we approved, and I don't know if I said this before, the county pays $1,000 to benefits when it comes to employees of the county, and so we've upped it to $1,500 so that the employees aren't paying, pretty much digging into their wages to pay for their families' benefits. This is also done so we can help keep people, retain people, and also recruit. And we looked at the reason also that with the directors to appropriate their budget. The main reason also is because we have those issues with law enforcement, which I know is a lot of the things we talk about here. Law enforcement consistently says they can't fill the streets with deputies because they have to fill the correction office and dispatch. Well, the idea for this this initiative is to ensure that they could pay their dispatchers more, so deputies aren't doing that, and also fill those positions of corrections so the deputies don't have to do that, because that's what's keeping them off of the streets, really, is having to fill those positions. So by doing this, we're hoping that it fills that gap, so you are now patrolled better. So we're going to see some results here upcoming in the next year, because the budget was passed for that, and so just wanted to let you know that that's moving forward to that. Oh, real quick, undergrounding in Spring Valley. I know someone asked me about that before, because PG&E is doing undergrounding, and there's a real big concern of the fact that they're worried that they'll be blocked in or something like that. PG&E has assured me that they would not close both lanes in any capacity, that they will allow and have a lane open while they do that work. Yeah, well, we've had our way with PG&E over at RCRC talking about these things, and then now we're going to be dealing with them tomorrow. Well, not them, but the Russian River Water Forum. We're presenting tomorrow about Lake Pillsbury. We're still dealing with that situation. That's going to go to FERC in November, and so PG&E is submitting their plan for decommissioning, and so we're a part of that group and have consistently gave our position that first off, we don't agree with the decommissioning of the dam, but we also want to see Lake County made whole if there is a situation where the dam does come down. And we've put up consistent arguments. I know Jim Steele has done so when he was the supervisor, and so we've pretty much maintained that same argument and stance. Let's see, we have a new public health officer, Noemi Doohan. She started, I want to say, 2 weeks back, and so she's in county at least. I want to say we've put in her contract she has to be in county, and so there's times when she isn't, but anytime there's an emergency, anytime there's a situation, she's here. So whereas before, I know we hired someone that was in like Arizona, but that's all we could find. Well, that's not the case, because we know how frustrating that was for all of you as well. And I think you all know about the presentation with Caltrans that took place here last month when we didn't have a quorum. I did get the slides, so I'm going to have to post that for you all, because I know that was something that was requested to be posted on the Facebook as well. So I got those slides, and I'll be putting those up as well. She gave an update about Roadmap Task Force. That's what I have here. I'll wait, and if anyone wants to talk, I know there's a couple people here, probably wants to update or get updates from me, so I'll be here.
Super site.
What's that?
Super site.
Superfund site?
Yeah.
Oh, Superfund site's still it's still in its stage right now. I haven't heard any updates from it. I know that what's his name? He has a really, either way, the Carter, is it Carter Jessup? That's his name. He had reached out to me about the Spring Valley Lake recovery, because he wants to ensure that when and if they work simultaneously, that they could use the sediment from that recovery project to help with the capping of Herman Pit once that takes place. So I know that that's been something we've been meeting about, so that's the most I have on that update.
Okay,
Hurry up and wait.
thank you.
Mhm.
Again, he said he'll stay after if anybody has any specific questions for him. Thank you, Supervisor. Do we have any new business? Oh, I'm sorry. Of course. Yeah, of course.
Where's my phone?
This is real quick, and I'm
2
going to make
minutes,
it 2
I'm sorry.
minutes. But this has to do with seniors and disabled who can't get themselves around. It's a mobility issue. The Lake Links has been established for that, LAKELINKS, lakelinks.org. So go there, look at the programs. Here's 3 programs that may affect someone that you know or yourself. Pay Your Pal, so if somebody is driving around a senior disabled, they can get paid for doing that by mileage. So that's Pay Your Pal, and the money goes through the person that's being driven and then over to the person that does the driving. And that's 40 cents a mile. So look into that. If you're driving someone around or someone's driving you, make sure that they're getting something back for that. But we have one more program we just launched. This is Ride Links. This is where people can volunteer and go through the program of training and be available to drive someone who can't get around. So they get vetted, they're insured, and then they'll go out and drive someone who calls in and says, is there a volunteer? So we need volunteers. And if you're someone who gives back to the community, please call lakelinks.org or the phone number, which is on the website, and volunteer. We really need that from the community, and it's really rewarding to give back. And the final thing is the ADA eligibility provider, Lake Transit Authority. If you give them a call and you've got to go somewhere, there are ways for them to get a bus out to you and get you there if you have nothing else and you need ADA style pickup and delivery. So let us know. Try to get involved in the community and look up this program that we have going. We're getting funded. It all's community give back, and it's for seniors and disabled. So if you have any questions, look it up on lakelinks.org. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I did want to say something, and I'm not going to say it on the, I'm sure you can hear me.
Yeah.
I want to apologize because I heard something you said about the cannabis in Spring Valley.
Yeah.
And I know that for me, I know I was one of the main people that worked with you when Ricky and Karen about the cannabis in that area. I will take responsibility for there's no one else that told you that there wasn't allowed to be growing out there. I assumed that you knew commercial cannabis was what we were talking about. And so I will take accountability and apologize that I assumed that you knew that medicinal cannabis was allowed. That's my mistake, because I did assume that was the
Part is my conversations with Marcus, so it's not just you.
Well, I know that for me,
Yeah.
I assumed that people knew that. So
Yeah.
that's my mistake.
They're completely different things.
the way it started to begin with. Little people
But-
going in their backyard.
So, I am gonna
That's
say
true.
we're gonna do this after the meeting because we are already running over. We
Okay.
have it at the bottom of our agenda here. We will not do that. So, any quick announcements? If not? All right. So, next Earth meeting will be Wednesday, November 1st, 2023, right here at 4 o'clock and until 5:30. Hope to see you then. Thank you.
Yay.